Okay, so I'm going to try not to make this one too long because I've got a lot of subjects that I want to talk about. But I just want to touch on the Oscars, the Academy Awards, the 91st Academy Awards 2019 from Los Angeles. Now, I didn't watch the event because of the time difference. It's not broadcast on any of the terrestrial channels in the UK. There's just kind of some clips from the press, like replays and so on. Um, I followed it closer last year and the year before, but the results: Olivia Colman won Best Actress, um, Remy Malek won Best Actor, Best Film went to Green Book, which I'd intended to see actually. Looks like a good film. I might still watch it if it's still out. And I don't know what the other winners were. I understand it's the first Academy Awards in some time that hasn't had a presenter because there was some controversy over. I think it was um, I don't want to say the wrong name. I can't remember the rapper who had homophobic comments that emerged. Anyway, I just want to touch on a few very basic things about which direction the Academy Awards is going in. I've touched on this before, the whole identity politics thing. The clips that I did see. Well, firstly, a quick word about the two winners. I didn't see Bohemian Rhapsody. It looked like a good film. And by all accounts, Remy Malek had a very strong portrayal of Freddie Mercury, so that seems well deserved. And he seems like a likable guy. He seems humble. Um, Olivia Colman again. I saw The Favourite. It was a very unusual film. My main critique of it was that it was a little on the long side. However, it was an original period film. It wasn't. It was far better than The Duchess, made about 10 years ago, and I thought it was. It's one of the few films made about Queen Anne, and I thought her performance was very strong, and I genuinely think it's nice to hear that someone who was working as a cleaner is now an Academy Award winner. That is a rags to riches situation, and in her speech she said that she was happy then, but that was something that she kept aspiring to. So that's genuinely something that's it's a feel good factor. But the other clips I saw of the Oscars, it was pretty much identity politics bash Trump, identity politics bash Trump, identity politics bash Trump. That seemed to be the whole event summarized. There was one actor, I can't remember his name, but he done a parody. He came into the event imitating Mary Poppins, but then he done a whole umbrella charade, which was meant to imitate Trump. And here's my take. Firstly, the Oscars has become incredibly politicized in the last few years. You could argue on some level they've always been political. I'm thinking of Marlon Brando's refusal to take his Oscar because of his issues with the way Native Americans were treated. So there's always been an aspect of politicization at the Oscars, but it's been on overdrive in the last few years. Now, Hollywood is famously pro liberal, pro democratic, and it's been that way for a long time. I think it's almost blasphemy these days to have conservative views in Hollywood, um, or even the way things are going, centrist and moderate views. It almost seems that to be a successful person, whether it be actor, producer, screenwriter in Hollywood these days, you have to tick all the boxes. You have to virtue signal. You have to be all about identity politics. And what I mean by that is if you look at a situation like Oscars So White, that whole controversy, as I saw it, was about give me an Oscar because I'm black. Now, Green Book looks like a good film, and I can't really judge whether it merits a Best Picture because I haven't seen it. It looks like a good film, but look at the sort of successful films there's been recently that have got a lot of accolades. They've almost all been about race issues. Selma, The Butler, the thing about numbers, I forget the exact title, about the African American women at NASA, 12 Years a Slave. No one can say that certainly African American issues are being ignored in Hollywood. I don't know how anyone can rationally argue that with the number of films that have been around race issues in the 2010s decade. There's been a lot of them. Um, The United States of America is still a predominantly white country. Now, the demographics are changing in states like Texas and California, but it is still a predominantly white country. So, if the issue is about making Hollywood look like society, then by definition, you're going to have more white representation. That is reality. That is society. And like I say, in places like California and Texas, the demographics are changing, but America as a whole is still predominantly white. So if the Oscars are predominantly white, then that's just reflecting that. I mean, look at Nollywood. That's going to be overwhelmingly black Nigerian. Bollywood's going to be overwhelmingly South Asian Indian. That's just um, it's just reflecting what the demographics are. And I think what we're seeing in Hollywood is this constant drive to virtue signal. And that actually hurts everyone. It doesn't help minority actors because it gives the impression they're only getting awards because of the color of the skin. And in many cases, they do deserve awards. They work hard, they're good actors, but that's going to be the perception. That, in my opinion, is the fallout from Oscars So White. It also discriminates against white actors because it's saying you may be the best in this category, but we're worried about giving you this award if you're a white man. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that white men are being ignored. Obviously, there's some very successful, powerful white men in Hollywood, but they have to virtue signal. They've got no choice. Because any white man that spoke out against political correctness or was, let's say, a Trump supporter, he would absolutely, if he was already successful, then he would be blacklisted. This is almost like the reverse of what was happening in the 50s, the McCarthy era, when Hollywood actors were accused of being communists. What we're seeing nowadays in Hollywood, and I'm not saying it's exactly the same, I'm not saying that right wingers are being actively persecuted, but without doubt, put it this way, if you don't slavishly support Me Too, if you are not, if you don't recognize 40 different genders, if if you don't get on board the entire liberal worldview, or one could argue regressive left worldview, then I think you're going to find it hard to get recognition in Hollywood these days. And that's obviously wrong. I believe that awards at Hollywood, the Academy Awards, should be solely about talent. In terms of the issue around opportunities, I think that it's good that there's films being made about all sorts of subjects. I welcome that. It's a good thing. And I am a strong believer in opportunities. So I don't think anyone should be held back because of the color of the skin, their sexual orientation, etc. But there's a very important caveat here that the United States of America and the state of California has very strict anti discrimination laws. So no one can rationally say that there is active discrimination in 2019 against minorities in Hollywood. If anything, it's more likely that you're going to be discriminated against if you're a white heterosexual male. And people will say, oh, but look at the number of white men in Hollywood. Like I say, they have to virtue signal. That's why they're successful, partly. Partly it's because they're genuinely talented. I like Leonardo DiCaprio. I like Tom Hanks. I like those guys. They're talented. They're entertaining. But here's another thing about the Oscars. Actors seem to think that they have this monopoly on opinion. I mean, I'm not one of these people that say, "Oh, they should shut up and just entertain us." They have a right to an opinion. They're citizens. They have a right to an opinion, but they need to understand that when they get up and make lectures, it's patronizing the audience, and they don't seem to understand. They seem to live in this little Hollywood bubble, and some of them have come close to admitting it. They live in this little Hollywood bubble, and all that does is makes millions of Trump supporters say, "Oh, look, it's a Hollywood elite." When you get multimillionaire actors and actresses, complaining, that does not go down well. And I appreciate acting isn't easy. In most cases, they have worked very hard. But I saw a comment the other day, Jussie Smollett, the actor that lied about the situation in Chicago, is Hollywood personified in one person. Now, I think that's a bit of hyperbole, but that does show the how many people feel about this. So many people will want to watch the Oscars because they're film fans. I'm a film fan. But what actors need to understand is that first and foremost, they are entertainers. They're not revolutionary leaders, they're entertainers. And I think if they don't realize that, and if the Democratic Party becomes so closely associated with Hollywood, I think that's going to get Trump a second term. It won't be the only issue, there'll be other issues. And that is a big problem because I think Trump, in many ways, is a terrible president. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's become entirely about identity politics these days. It's become so political that I do believe the decisions have been hijacked by this notion that we have to have a quota of, if we don't have, a gay person, a black person, a Hispanic person, a transgender person, if we don't have so many women, etc., then then we're not being true to ourselves. So it's like my attitude would be, I don't want to see an all white Hollywood. That wouldn't be realistic. But I really don't think that's been the case in recent years. And my concern is it's going too far the other way, whereby people are being rewarded solely because of their demographic. Now that is clearly wrong. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the winners in this Academy Awards don't deserve it. Like I say, I thought Olivia Colman had a strong performance in The Favourite. I didn't see Bohemian Rhapsody, but from the clips I saw, Remy Malek again, strong performance. And and I can't judge Green Book, I didn't see it, but definitely there is a trend towards identity politics, and it's just getting very boring. I mean, do these privileged actors not realize that people don't want to hear them make self-congratulatory jokes about Trump? And I get it, he's an easy target because, he so often digs himself into a hole, but the political bias is just polarizing because everyone likes film. Right wingers, left wingers, Trump supporters, Trump opponents, everyone likes film. So when these entertainers get up and lecture people, I don't think it goes down well. Let me know your thoughts.